In episode 58, titled Execute Annual Assessment Requirements, we turn to the structured rhythm of yearly assurance, a time when control evidence, testing, and trend analysis converge to prove that the system remains secure, compliant, and operationally disciplined. The annual assessment should feel less like a disruption and more like a milestone on a well-managed calendar. When planned early and executed methodically, it validates the health of both the security program and the operating culture behind it. The goal is to plan checks that are thorough enough to satisfy oversight while gentle enough to avoid paralyzing daily operations. Annual assessments done well reaffirm confidence in the system and set the tone for the next authorization cycle with no surprises. Begin by confirming the required elements: sampling, control reviews, and penetration testing. Each of these plays a distinct role. Sampling examines representative assets or transactions to confirm consistent control performance across environments. Control reviews test whether policy statements, procedures, and technical measures continue to align with the standards that underpin the authority to operate, ATO. Penetration testing validates the resilience of external and internal defenses against real-world exploitation attempts. Reviewing the official program guidance ensures you meet specific mandates for sample size, testing frequency, and independent assessor involvement. Reconfirm the required components with the sponsor or project management office, PMO, before work begins so that no key element is overlooked or duplicated unnecessarily. Align the annual scope with significant changes and the previous year's findings to ensure attention goes where it is most needed. Review the change records, deviations, and closed plan of actions and milestones, POA and M entries, from the last 12 months. If the architecture changed, if new data types were introduced, or if external dependency shifted, those areas deserve deeper sampling and targeted testing. Likewise, controls that yielded repeat weaknesses in earlier cycles should be revisited until trend lines flatten. This focus prevents wasted effort on static, low-risk areas and demonstrates to assessors that your program prioritizes based on evolving risk rather than routine. The annual should tell a story of learning, not repetition. Reserve testing windows, resources, and environments early to avoid last-minute compression. Annual assessment season often overlaps with fiscal closes, product releases, and operational freezes, all of which can create scheduling conflicts. Book dedicated assessor time and internal support resources months in advance. Ensure that representative test environments are available, credentialed accounts are provisioned, and scanning infrastructure is scaled appropriately. Early reservation also gives teams time to coordinate maintenance windows and reduces pressure to cut corners later. Predictable windows show oversight bodies that the program manages assessment as a planned process, not as a reactive scramble. Pre-stage artifacts long before testing begins: inventories, procedures, exports, and access approvals. Confirm that asset inventories reflect the current boundary, that documented procedures are versioned and approved, and that relevant data exports are current. Secure assessor access through the formal authorization process, with approval records and time-bound credentials in place. When assessors arrive to start their work, they should find evidence folders ready, dashboards available, and documentation current. This level of readiness shortens testing duration, lowers stress, and proves that continuous monitoring throughout the year has kept materials fresh. In practice, good pre-staging often determines whether the annual is a smooth validation or a drawn-out reconstruction exercise. One of the most common mistakes is starting too late, which forces testing and remediation into compressed windows and elevates operational risk. When preparation drags into the assessment period, environments change midstream, evidence expires, and human fatigue leads to oversights. Avoid this by treating the annual as a standing program, not a project. Assign owners for continuous evidence updates, schedule quarterly pre-checks, and keep status dashboards visible year-round. That way, when the formal cycle begins, most evidence already exists in current form, and assessors can focus on validation rather than validation. The annual review then becomes confirmation of discipline, not a rescue operation. Efficiency improves when you run quarterly spot checks that mirror small portions of the annual workload. These short reviews test control samples, verify documentation accuracy, and validate evidence formats. They reveal process drift early and spread testing effort across the calendar, so the final annual requires less concentrated effort. Spot checks also train staff to maintain readiness continuously, making the distinction between assessment time and normal operations largely disappear. Over time, this rhythm transforms compliance from episodic stress to sustained practice. Consider an example that illustrates this flow. After a major architecture refactor, an annual test is scheduled to confirm isolation and data flow integrity between the old and new segments. The pre-staged boundary diagrams already show new virtual private cloud mappings and access routes. Assessors validate firewall configurations, run authenticated scans within the new region, and review logs demonstrating enforced segmentation. The result is a clean confirmation that refactoring strengthened rather than weakened isolation controls. Because the test was planned early, executed under known windows, and matched to recent change history, the annual process felt like ordinary due diligence instead of a fire drill. Coordination with the third-party assessment organization, TPAO, and program sponsor is vital to align calendars, expectations, and deliverables. Schedule kickoffs jointly, circulate draft timelines, and secure sign-offs on sampling plans and evidence templates. Clarify submission requirements, whether Open Security Controls Assessment Language, OSCAL, traditional reports, or hybrid formats, so teams can prepare data in the correct structure from the outset. This coordination minimizes rework and avoids miscommunication that can delay final authorization maintenance. Establishing transparency at the calendar level sets the tone for transparency in evidence handling and reporting. Track all identified issues through the POAM using targeted remediation milestones. During the annual cycle, findings should flow directly into the existing tracking mechanism rather than creating new, disconnected lists. Assign owners immediately, estimate remediation timelines, and record evidence of progress in the same repository. As partial fixes or compensating controls appear, document them and link the evidence to the finding record. This continuity ensures that auditors can trace every observation from discovery to closure without wading through redundant documents. It also shows leadership that the program manages risk actively and consistently between assessments. Compare the new results against last year's trends and remaining residual risks to gauge progress and maturity. Plot metrics such as mean time to remediate, repeat finding rate, and average vulnerability age. Highlight improvements as well as stagnation so resources can be targeted realistically. If residual risk remains due to systemic issues, legacy systems, vendor dependencies, or budget constraints, state those explicitly with action plans and acceptance records. Trend analysis distinguishes organizations that merely check boxes from those that manage trajectories. Once all analysis is complete, produce clear report packages for both external agencies and internal leadership. The agency package should align with prescribed formats, include signed integrity hashes, and contain all supporting evidence indices for independent verification. The internal version should translate findings into strategic terms, risk categories, investment priorities, and schedule implications. Deliver both sets securely using separate channels for sensitive artifacts and signing each archive to confirm authenticity. The goal is one truth, tailored presentations. Keep the memory phrase, plan early, test right, remediate relentlessly as the cultural anchor for the team. Planning early guarantees orderly execution. Testing right ensures credible results. And remediating relentlessly turns assessment from paperwork into protection. The phrase captures the life cycle of the program and the discipline it demands year after year. In conclusion, executing annual assessment requirements successfully means embedding readiness into the organization's daily rhythm. By aligning scope with change, reserving resources early, staging evidence continuously, and maintaining transparent coordination with the TPA and sponsor, you transform compliance from a deadline into a living system of accountability. The next logical step is to schedule next quarter's spot checks, keeping the cadence unbroken and ensuring that next year's annual review begins, in effect, today. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.